How's it going, guys, and welcome back to Untold Ireland. Today is our Christmas special. With us we have the wonderful John Egan, who's been kind enough to agree to do an interview with us. I'd like to say a special thank you to O'Sullivan's Bar in Kilgarvan again, also known as Jack Rogers Bar, for providing us a location to film once again. And without further ado, guys, let's crack on with the interview. How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? Today we're here with the lovely John Egan. Right, so John, would you just like to tell us a bit about yourself?
Oh, I was born on a farm in Barnastooka way back in 1949. I suppose we'd come down here to Kilgarvan to the national school, just 3 miles, and we used to walk up and down every day. And the teachers were tough enough that time. Wet weather or dry weather, you would have to be there. There was no such thing as a driving the car or anything. I think the first time I went to school, my father brought me in the bike. He had no car that time, he got a car a few years after. So what happened during the school, I remember one incident. My mother gave me money to post 2 letters. There wasn't much postage. That time there was, the postman had come around maybe once or twice a week because there weren't many letters. But so she gave me the money for the stamps. So I decided, I said, I have money now. I know I post the letters at all. So when I was crossing over the Rookty Bridge, I pegged the 2 letters into the river. And I went into Kilmare Bay. So after school, I went into some shop in the village and I bought a Swiss roll. Swiss rolls were popular at the time, and I ate it all in one go. And I was nearly sick by the time I got home from the height of eating. So there was no more heard about the letters. There mustn't have been much importance because they didn't say anything at home, that nothing happened about them, trying to apply for anything or anything. Another incident during the school, I think I stole £20 from my father. It was a pile of money that time. He put his coat after mass up on the stairs, and I see the money sticking out, and I took out the £20. And there was a big shop down here in the village, Joe Maybre's. It is long since closed. So I bought a hurley and a slitter, and I bought a pipe and enough tobacco for the whole year. So I went into the school. I went inside long and I lit the pipe in the cloakroom. And I was pulling away on the pipe, and who came in but the head teacher, Dermot Hickey, who lives down here in the village. He's dead as well. And geez, didn't he take the pipe off me and report to my father. And I had only a couple of pulls taken off the pipe. So that wasn't a great experience at all about the pipe. Anyway, after the national school, I went to Kilmare to the secondary for 2 years. And I stopped in because there was no one at home to help my father. And I worked on the farm at home then for the rest of the time.
And what was it like working on the farm as well then?
Well, it was more old-fashioned that time. We had a horse. It was different, there was no tractor, and we used to be saving the hay in the summer. There was a lot of manual work, piking, working with the shovels, things that people don't do now, milking the cows by hand first. Then I think we got a milking machine later on. Of course, things got more modern, things got easier. So it was tough enough that time. It was tough enough. I remember when we would go down to the field to go training for hurling, my father would be giving you out mad. He'd say, "What is this bloody hurling about?" He'd say. You would take off and we would have to cycle down the 3 miles. We were too young to drive a car then. But we used to listen to him half the time. We'd go away anyway. But the farming itself, you'd have to be up, we're going to the creamery then, you'd have to be up in the morning, I think it was at 6:30 to milk the cows. It was tough enough. And you would have no day off during, they'd be milking, say, from February to September or October. So it was hard enough, to put it mildly. You would be kind of going all the time, but in later years, we sold the cows, and it is now mostly sheep we have. So you wouldn't be as much tied down to that. Only at the time of lambing. We'd have a big number of sheep, we'd have over 800 ewes. So there'd be a good lot of work to do, but we get help, We get girls that we training to be vits or to be part of their training as well. They come to help for a month, and they are a big help. So it makes it a lot easier. Of course, things were way slower that time. We used to draw in the hay with the horse. You would pike the hay into the horse, and then you would have to pike it out of that up in the shed. And then people, I suppose, we started cutting silage in 1971 or 2, and that meant there was no more hay. It was harder to save the hay at that time, because some of the summers would be you know, they'd be kind of raining, and you know, you would be all summer at it. You would cut an acre maybe at a time, because they'd be saved it with a pike. Nowadays, people that save here, they have modern machinery, and they chance cutting down a lot of it, but it would be chance enough if the weather changed. As we all know from a local character in Kilgarvan, he lost all his hair this year. You could be left with nothing. You would be depending on the weather. But that time, you would only cut so much, and if we lost it same, we wouldn't lose that big percentage of it. But hair it's gone out of fashion now. It's nearly all silage here in this area in Kilgarvan. And there's a big change in other things in farming. Nobody sets potatoes. That time we would set potatoes and it would be at them all the year. You would be digging them in October. People used to sell them then in bags. People in the village and towns would buy them off, but nowadays couldn't pay. You can get them cheaper and Super Value or Aldi or Lidl or any of these big establishments, and it wouldn't pay at all to be bothered with us at these kind of things. So there's big. Another thing that's changed an awful lot is the wool. When I was young, I remember my father bought a new car in the 1950s. And every big sheep farmer at that time bought new cars. The wool was massive. To the way more value than the sheep. What money would make out of wool was savage. They used to put it into ships that time because if gunpowder hit it, it would fall dead inside it. But the modern gunpowder, it is no good against the modern gun. So the value of wool has gone down to nothing. Actually, this year, in our wool, we sold some of it. We didn't bother with the rest of it. Didn't put it into bags and sell it. You know that there's nothing hardly for it. There don't seem to be any demand for it. China were buying it there for a few years, but China isn't going that well now, I think. And all the time there used to be these Arden jumpers and cardigans before your time. Everyone used to be this white jumper and a cardigan, but we don't see them anymore. They're not there either. They're modern synthetics or things I think that's taken over from the wool. And of course the government knows that they subsidise the sheep if prices are bad. You get this thing called a subsidy or a bounty. And people in mountain areas, they have big acres and they get single farm payment, which is good. There's one farm in Kilgarvan, I think they have 2,000 acres. So they'd have a substantial amount of money. As well as that, Kilgarvan have a lot of windmills. We have a few windmills ourselves in our farm, we have 3, and there's an income out of them as well. But I don't think there'll be any more because people are objecting to them. They're way out in rural areas, like as you can see them up in the mountains. But you wouldn't have a hope to get them near Kenmare now, for instance, or Killarney. They say that the tourists don't like them. I don't say anything wrong with them. They're away from everyone. They're doing no harm to anyone. But it's very hard to get planning permission. It costs mighty money now to get planning. But the ESP and the crowd are at them, they make big money out of them. So I say, for instance, now the wind farm there in Kilgarvan to make 5 or 6 million profit in the year, at least. There's big money, and that's after paying the landowners and everything. So there's big money because there's good wind here. We're near the sea here, and the mountains are high. It wouldn't be as good now, I'd say, on the east coast or on inland in the country, where the wind wouldn't be as high. Lots of different things happens in farming, I suppose. There's no 2 years the same. You can get fine weather, you can get bad weather, you can get frost. You can get, the big thing is snow on the hill is a very big thing. Sheep get smothered. And I remember one year in 1978 or 79, there was this desperate snow again. And there was no feeding sheep at that time. So we'd go out to the mountain, and the only way you would see them is if the wind came to blow the snow into a hollow, and the sheep would go into the hollow as well. And it would be up about 10 feet over them. You'd see where they'd be breeding, a kind of a yellow hole with on top of it, and people dug out a lot of them, and they freed them. But they even eat the wool of themselves until the snow melted. Some of them would be dead. But they were some of the toughest times, I think, in farming. That you will get, well, we've got no bad snow or nothing like that, and as far as I can remember now in recent years, there's been nothing like that. We've got floods, of course, plenty of floods. Rivers have changed there. They could be going one way one time, and the banks had changed to go away to the other side of the river, but outside of floods. And wind, of course, there's been big wind. Wind is a serious thing, taking away sheds and different things like that.
Do you want to talk more about the shepherd thing?
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, how do you call it? A social media thing or what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
YouTube and
Yeah.
TikToks and all
We're
that.
stuck in a local thing there about farming, to be on YouTube and Instagram and different things. And my son is stuck in it and he's a massive following. We show us there what we do on the farm, all activities on the farm. Once we're young lambs being born, calves being born, way out in the mountain with the quads. I have a record of turning quads over. And the quads turning over on. But I survived them anyway. And people are all interested in that like, and how we go way up the mountains with the quads and all the different types of work we do, dosing the sheep and dipping the sheep. And my son, he gets a lot of sponsorship. He got a thing there from New Zealand, which is the most modern in the world. Which is worth about 15,000. It weighs the sheep. You can drive them into it to dose them. Can turn them. There's a crate in it. Turn them upside down. It's all automatic with a control. It will measure the dose according to their weight. Which is one of the most modern in Europe. I'll say in the world. It's the New Zealand crowd that makes them anyway. But besides that, he gets a lot of things. He gets dosing stuffs. He gets cut prices on feeding stuff, meals for cattle and meals for sheep. We use a lot of meal because we fatten a lot of lambs. So it would mean, outside of that, he'd get things like quads. There's a local dealer there in Milltown, Tino O'Neill. He sponsors him. We get sponsorships and he gets sponsorships and quads and everything. So he's doing well enough financially out of it. But some lad said he won't be getting half as much, only for some of the stories that I'd be telling on it. They'd be listening to the stories for the farming. But you can't think of stories all the time. So I think my stories are running out now. I don't know how you can make them up. These were things that happened to me, you know, they happened all along my life from once I was a young lad until up until today. There's even things happening to me up until today.
Well, there was you did a quad training thing.
Oh yeah, we
up
did.
above.
We did.
Would you like to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah.
I heard it was great crack.
Yeah, we did a quad training course and over a man called Sean Morton from back around over the water in Carsavine. He's originally from Waterville, and he'd come out to the house, and if you get 4 people, he'll do it in your own place, and it's very handy for people because you have to have a quad and you have to have your helmet, and he'll explain everything. And there's a bit of an exam at the end of it, but the exam, like in fairness, is not that too hard, and if any lad is stuck for anything, sure, I suppose the lad next to him, it's not as hard as we're going to university or anything like that. The lad next to him will prompt him, and it's easy enough to complete, and we'll get our certificate. And we'll have to have it now, I think. Say if we're drawing insurance and we've got a bad accident with a quad, you have to have the course done. And I think if we're a member of board B, that's another thing, you have to have the course done. So everybody will have to do it eventually.
What would have been some of your hobbies and interests when you were growing up?
Well, I suppose first of all I played hurling with Kilmare, Kilgarvan, and we won Kerry under 16 hurling championship. And I remember it was a great thing to win because the following year the winners of the Kerry hurling championship were taken up to the All-Ireland hurling final of 1968. It was played above in Dublin between Wexford and Tipperary. We were taken up in a big bus from Kilmare. We stayed in O'Mara's Hotel in Nina the night before. And we were carried off to Dublin, and Claire Wills, who sponsored us, served a big dinner above in their premises above in Dublin. They were a tobacco crowd. You can't get tobacco sponsorship now. And we'd hog and stand tickets. So it was all right. Coming down home on the bus, there was a Kilgarvan man driving the bus, actually, Thomas Randalls. He was a bus driver, but we were kind of wore out after the long, escapade. So coming down around Abbey Field or coming into the border, didn't the window of the bus break? And the man driving the bus got out and he was very cross. So he said, Christ, he said, who broke the bus? So it was the Kilmare man, because the Kilmare crowd were in the back half of the bus and we were in the front half. So Tom Randall's got every lad out in the road, but Dennis P here next door to us where we are now, we were here in Rogers Bar, Dennis P had the post office next door, he was over the team, and he said, I'll stand to the cost of whatever the window cost to pay the money for the window of the bus. So nobody admitted to breaking it, but while we were out on the road, somebody put in a craic, a turf. There was a reek, a tough part out in the country where it happened. And that drove the bus driver mad because he knew it was from inside out. And you see, the craic was inside. So they knew it, but anyway, nobody admitted it. But that was a long time ago, 1968, but I was in Kinmare, Matt. I said it now 3 years ago. And I was talking to one of the players, I'd be good friends with him. And he was a retired guard then. He was there. He said, do you know what? 'Twas I broke the window, he said. 'Twas by pure accident, he said. We was falling asleep and we stretched up out our legs like that. Do you know what? We were there so long and he didn't mean to break it, obviously. So, but that's not telling, the fact that I said he was a retired guard, that's not telling no one, because 5 members of that panel, of that team, later became guards. So that was the story with that. So not telling you who broke the window in the bus. But lots of different things happened besides that. I played hurling with Kilgarvan for a bit, and I started running in the 1960s, and I had great success. I won my first race, and I got second in the All-Ireland under 18, and I won the Kerry senior cross country 10 times. I ran for Ireland in Paris. I ran in a couple of other countries as well. But I had my best time in Paris for 10 kilometres cross country, 30 minutes and 1 second, to still win races easily today. So that was probably one of my best performances. But I stayed at running until I was old. I won the All-Ireland over 45 above in Banbridge County Down. So I think that was the end of my racing. I gave it up then. I wouldn't want to be running any older than that. So after that I got involved in the GA here. I was PRO of the club here, and I was manager of the Kilgarvan junior hurling team, the second team, for 11 years. And we had good success in that as well. But there was a bit of an upheaval in the club, and I suppose there was no people to over, and so I wasn't involved with the club since, but I used to pay my membership. So that was my time in sport. Of course, my son then started boxing, and I was an officer in the Kinmare Boxing Club and in the Kerry County Board Boxing for a long number of years, and I used to report in Radio Kerry Sport for a long number of years. I was PRO for a couple of different organisations. For the athletics, I was also PRO for the Kilgarvan GA Club, and for the South Kerry Born and Organ Hurling. So I was involved in a lot of things in sport in my lifetime. But as I get older, new people have to come in who can't stay at it all the time. So that was my time in sport.
You mentioned there being the PRO for the radios and stuff like that. How did you get into that? Well,
I got into that because I was PRO for the athletics. I was involved in athletics first. I won Radio Kerry opened in 1990. The presenter at that time was Seamus O'Mahony, and I was good friends with him. His son Joe O'Mahony is the man over sport now actually. But I used to ring in the report, and every other PRO would ring in, and it was mostly music. They'd play on Radio Kerry. So one day there was a race in Killarney. I wasn't running myself, and he said, "Will you come on live?" He said at 5:30 and report on the race. So I think I was the first person ever to report live on Radio Kerry of an event, because the first game that was ever covered in was the following year, 1991, the Kerry senior hurling final between Kinmare and Ballyduff. Kinmare had 3 Kilgarvan players with them, 2 Foleys and Dennis Randalls. And that game was broadcast by this Seamus O'Mahony, head of sport. But he didn't broadcast any more games after that. He was more of a man for over the radio than the football final was on a couple of weeks after, and they had no men broadcasting it, because broadcasting a game is you want to be well timed into it. It's not easy. So I was to report for different organisations and Radio Kerry over different times. But one great incident happened in Radio Kerry, and this bar here was involved in it. I had retired from athletics. It must be around 1996 or 97. I had retired in 95, but I was still PRO, and I used to go to every race, and this race was above in Ban, no, it wasn't, it was in County Down, in Jesus Christ, Ross Trevor, County Down. So there was a moment reporting for the paper, and I was good friends with her, and she told me she'd ring me the result. So of course I was at home, and I called out the results of some of the races, first at 3:30, and then at 5:30 I called out the senior race. And about an hour after, didn't I arrive into Roger's bar. So one man jumped up and he said, "We can believe nothing we hear anymore. You were above in County Loud and Oracle. How do you hear in Rogers now?" So up next I said, I was thinking, I came down by plane, I said, to Fun 4, and that put him off. He wasn't as much for attacking me at all as he was first. I suppose if he looked at it better, he'd know you couldn't possibly done it, because you'd have to go to the airport and you would have to queue going in and queue coming out. You couldn't do it at all. But that was one of the most unusual things that happened during my time as PRO. Because this girl used to often bring the results to me, to know to the far away race I mightn't go to it. But I thought she'd be very reliable. She'd be, because you can't take a result from someone that's not well up in it, because you could say something wrong and you could be liable for it. So that was my time, and I gave years at the PRO anyway. I was writing a bit in the papers as well, small bit in the Kerry.
And you mentioned the Kerry Boxing Club as well. Could you just tell us a bit more about that?
Well, my son then started boxing, and I became a member of the Kerry Boxing Club, and so I was stuck in the media. They wanted to get, they put me down as PRO, and I was PRO for the club. I remember we travelled all over the country. I remember we used to go to tournaments all over Munster, Waterford, Limerick, Tipperary, everywhere. And the boxing tournaments. But the boxing club ceased after a number of years in Kinmare, and there was no longer a boxing club in Kinmare. But we went up to the National Stadium in Dublin and different places, as my son was fairly successful enough at boxing. But he had to give it up then, when the boxing club here went out of existence, in other words. I suppose besides boxing, running and the GA, there were the three.
And would you have any funny stories from the farm as well? When just shenanigans that went on while you were growing up?
The story there, and I suppose it wouldn't have that much to do with farming, but we were farming. We went to, we used to go to the road of Tralee to be on the end of August, and there was a statue on Dinny Street, and I think I climbed it 4 times. It's kind of hard to climb it. Hardly anybody can climb it, but anyway, this year anyway I climbed it. You would only do it during Midnight Madness, when the roses would be parading around the town and people would be going up in windowsills and everything for a view of them, up in cars. So this year I went up, and there was another lad trying to come up, and he was failing, and I caught him and pulled him up. So while he was above, I ran down, and the guard said, "Don't go up again." And I ran up again and came down again, and the guards arrested me. Little did I know that the man that was gone up first refused to come down. He was high in drugs, I think, at the time. Drugs and drink or whatever, but he stripped off every bit of clothes and picked them down to the audience, and they were all cheery and everything, but it got serious at the end. He refused to come down. I think he urinated down as well, but he refused to come down. So the organisers, they had to get the fire brigade to come to take him down. So he was summoned, and he was up in court, and we had him Radio Kerry in the morning. Tralee man gets a year in jail. So I pulled him up. What should I get? So we were arrested anyway and taken in that night, but when we were left out again because there was a sergeant inside, he had previously been in Kinmare and he knew us. Or he said, "Let him in out." Once we gave the right name, we were left out. So but we were summoned about a month after. So it was fairly frightening enough. Would we get a year in jail? €50 fine and praise in the papers the following morning. Famous runner climbed statue for better view of Rose Parade continued on the back page. So we got the front and the back page. So it was more praise we got for doing it. So that was the thing that happened, I think, in 1992. When there was thousands looking at it at the time. Well, there was another story that happened in Kilgarvan. A man wrote a book, a famous man, Thomas Donoghue, of Kilmarnock. And it was a way back, I suppose, around the 1920s and 30s time he'd have written it. And that time everyone would have a station in the house. The idea of the station was priest would say mass, and all the neighbours would have to pay money to the priest. It was called the Jews. and he would have to go to the station. That time people were frightened of priests. So he'd collect money, and if you had 2 cows, you might have to pay a shilling. And if you had 10 cows, you might have to pay £1, which was a lot of money. So anyway, when the mass was over, he took out his book. You'd have to go up to him and called up. He'd call up Tim Madden, 2 shillings. He'd only 2 cows. Johnny Flaherty, he paid up. Johnny Flaherty, 4 cows. He'd have to pay more. Dunlett came up and he'd a pile of cows. Tom Muldoon, or he'd to pay a couple of pound. It was awful money. But one man, Dick O'Hara, was called up. And Dick was man for drink. He had a few cows, all right. But when he was asked for it, all I have, he said, is a shilling. And he should pay 5 shillings. Well, the priest got mad at him, and he cut the shilling, and he pegged it into the fire. So fine, after eating the head of him, he called up the next man. So Dick O'Hara went in, while he was dealing with the next man, paying the money. Dick O'Hara went into the fire, and he got at the ashes with the tongs, and he took out his shilling and put it into his pocket. So that was fine, the station was over. And Mass in Kilgarvan the following Sunday. They always go to Mass, they all trooped in. So the priest and his sermon, he said, I was at the station in such an area in Kilgarvan. What was it, Lumarnock, I think was the area. And he said, I was delighted, everyone paid, only one man. And the man was Dick O'Hara. He never paid. So Dick O'Hara was in the back of the church, and he jumped up and he said, you'll get nothing again next year. You can go to fuck, is it? So they all started laughing. So Dick O'Hara paid no more money to the priest. He was the first man ever to give out to a priest or to talk back to him. The people were so frightened. He jumped up in the back of the church and he shouted, you'll get nothing again next year, he said. So that was the story with that thing. Another one again to do with the church, I was. People didn't, at that time there used to be dances in houses. You know, there'd be people with a ball night, they would call it, and the priests were against dancing. They said it was bad. There was sex and everything going on, and this all carry on. So they were against it. So you wouldn't want to have any much station near the village. So way up in the far up part of Shields, about 10 or 11 miles from the village, there was an almighty ball night organised. They came from all over. They came from Cooley and Ballavoni and the Cockside and everywhere. It was mostly walking and cycling across. But the priest, that time he used to raid them. He had a kind of a horse and trap. A trap was a nice kind of a sidecar and a fast horse. And didn't someone let the beans out of the bag, they taught him about this big ball night. So of course the people were inside, they were dancing mad, everything was, they were drinking poteen and everything. And they were all singing and everything. So around 12 o'clock, the man outside the door watching, didn't he hear the priest coming? He heard the horse and trap coming. So everyone ran out the door and they headed for the hills as fast as they could. But when there's 2 people up in the hayrshed courting, and they didn't hear it at all. But when they had all the people passing, geez, they said they'd put on their clothes and come down off the shed, the hay. So the woman said, geez, I forgot my bag inside, or my coat inside in the house. And she went back in for the coat. And when she got the coat inside, she seen no one inside, but she rushed out the door as fast as she could. And she going out when the priest coming running as fast as he could to go into the house. And they hit an awful belt. And to stop himself from falling, he put his 2 hands around her until he landed down up on top of her. And the woman started screeching, get off me, you bastard, I'll tell the parish priest. So the priest got excited and he got up and he ran for his horse and trap and he went back to the village and he never again went up to Incheese or to the far out part of Kilgarvan.
That's gas.
that's bleeding.
But that used to happen. That used to happen that time the priest used to raid them.
1 second.
The priest ruled that time. Everyone was trained frightened of him. I remember when we were going to school, before it would be, be allowed our first communion, you would even have to pass an exam nearly, and for confirmation, they'd come in with this book, and you would have to be able to answer all these questions and say our prayers. But there's no such thing as that now. People are delighted to let them get the sacraments. But that time, of course, the priest, he He used to be walking along the road, and when he would meet the priest, you'd take off your cap to know that they don't met him, that he was a man of authority. He was like, the guards were highly thought of as well at the time, but everybody's the same now in latter years. Of course, the priests are way different. The most of them are very nice people, and they mingles with the people and talks with the people. That time they thought they were maybe a bit above the people. They were, of course, they have to be very well educated, and there was few people educated, especially in olden times. Hardly nobody went to university or anything. But nowadays, everybody's nearly, a lot of people are nearly as educated as the priest. But we used to be frightened of them, but no, we hadn't a bit afraid of them. You could give cheek to the priest now, Nell, and they take it, they could give it back to you. So I think they're better now. They mingle better with the people and things like that. They have a tough time too, of course. They're living alone inside in this house, and they can't be out and although they had one. You won't see them inside in bars singing and carousing, but maybe the had one do, no. I don't know. But that time they used it anyway. I don't know much more about them.
It's funny you say that about a priest statue. I was down at a christening down in Limerick, yeah. And you know PJ Delaney?
Yeah.
It would have been his daughter, but the priest that was there at the christening, Lorna, was telling me, Lorna's her name, like, she was telling me the whole time that the priest that was there, he was a gas crack, like, he was joking and mad the whole time. Yeah. And doesn't he get dragged out to the pub every Saturday and thrown into the car and he'd drive home and did
the guards would never catch the priest.
No, couldn't catch the priest.
I say not.
It's like a license for a drink too.
Well, they wouldn't catch him before anyway.
Yeah, but sure, he was gas, like, he's probably one of the funniest priests I've ever seen. Do you know?
Yeah, they know now, like, you can't be, they say the mass much. I don't go to mass much now, but there was mass for my daughter there a couple of weeks ago, anniversary mass. So I went to the mass, and outside the church the rays were till before the election were talking, so everyone was delayed. So I had the door of the car opened, and the next thing this man came and he said, "I know you, but you don't know me." Jeez, I was looking at him, this man was only about 26 years. I said, "I'm the new priest. He's from Glencar, up in the mountains there, and he'd be a sheep farmer as well, and he's following sheep shepherd. That's how he knew me. But he's in Kinmare now, he's an exception. There's hardly no new priest, he's only 26 years. But he said the mass awful fast as well. He wouldn't be inside long at all, no road. So he seemed to be a fierce, nice priest. But I suppose the most of the old timers now, they're nearly all retired. They're right, the tough crowd. They were there long ago. I said it was drilled into them to be tough in their training. So they all couldn't be the same otherwise. I suppose what you call the bishop, he'd be over them. It was like the sergeant tells the guards what to do, the bishop would tell the priest what to do. They used to carry on all right, they used to give big sermons. And the church thing about this ball was held last night and the devil was there and all this. And they had the fear of God put into the people. They used to be frightened of their lives.
Do you want to talk about the balls a bit more, actually?
About the which?
The balls.
I could.
Yeah, because I'd say a lot of people find that very interesting anyway.
Yeah. At that time, even when the priest stopped raiding the ball nights, these stations were, I remember we had a big station in 1973. I remember we got 2 cakes, we couldn't get them here in Rogers to give out, we got them down in Race. And the man that left out the drink was John Roger. There was a dance, and the lads were telling stories and singing and everything. But one very amusing thing happened. There was this individual, he wasn't going out long, and he started drinking, a well-known character. But anyway, this is the drink when John Roger was filling the drinks as quick as could, pints, and they would throw him down and they'd get him for nothing. So this lad went out, he was getting sick, and outside our shed that time, and there was the cow house right behind the back. And the cow dung was there, a big heap, but so didn't he vomit out? And he vomited out his teeth. So he had a bit of an impediment, and he came back in, and of course the lad, he was telling everyone they were taking on him. He was just, upon my soul to God, I lost my teeth, and upon my word, that people couldn't know what he was saying. But there was one old character, Joey Lynch was his name, he's long since dead. Joey listened to him, and he said, upon my soul to God, I lost my teeth. So he got a flash lamp, and he went out with him, So they were shiny around. Geez, didn't they see the teeth inside the dung? So your man pulled the teeth up and stuck them into his mouth. So that was, I remember, well, that happened in our station in 1973.
So, how would you compare the Ireland you grew up in to the Ireland today?
Well, I suppose there's a lot of differences. I remember there weren't much motor cars anyway. Most of the people, they were walking and cycling. I think when I was young, I'd say there was about 10% of the people or less had motor cars. But and I remember as well, people from far out parts of Kilgarvan, they'd leave their cars in the village and walk back to the church. And people in the village would start the cars and drive back to the church. So it wasn't so easy for people in far out places to go anywhere at the time, but they cycled. And I remember one time you could see 9 or 10 lads going home from Mass and they're having the fun of the world cycling with their bikes. And they might have to cycle 7 or 8 miles home from Mass, but they used to go to Mass. And people used to walk to Mass and everything. Nowadays, people aren't going to Mass at all, and they have cars and they can drive outside the door of the church. Another difference is the streeting of the houses. You don't call to your neighbour's house no more. I remember when we were young, we'd go in, there was 5 houses in Barnastooka where we lived in. We used to be in and out of them, and now you wouldn't be in and out to any of them. You would have nothing to do with them, you would meet them and talk to them, that was it. So people aren't going in no more. We used to go in that time for news. There was no radio at Kerry, and there was no phones at all. There weren't even phones in the house, never mind mobile phones. So people used to go in for news.
Right guys, I hope you enjoyed that interview. I'd like to say a special thank you to John Egan and his family over at Sheep Shepherd. All the links to their social media will be down below in the description, as well as the links to our social media. They'll also be down below in the description. If you'd like to support us, we have a link to our Patreon as well down there. So feel free to just check it out. You might like what you see. I'd like to say a special thank you to Sulawant Bar in Kilgarvan for providing us a location to film. Again, thank you very much. And Merry Christmas guys. Let us know how you felt about the interview down below in the comments. We'd love to hear some of your feedback, maybe some parts of the John Egan stories that you found funny or anything like that. And Merry Christmas guys and Happy New Year.